We're going to stop the left-wing radical racists and perverts who are trying to indoctrinate our youth, and we're going to get their Marxist hands off of our children. We're going to defeat the cult of gender ideology and reaffirm that God created two genders called men and women.
All right. Tommy Lehrer, let me start with you. Because there's been a big burning issue in America now, raging away for quite some time. It's one of the reasons I think that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has seen such surging popularity, potentially heading him to the White House in this battle over what you can teach at school with young people in relation to this kind of thing. What is your view?
Listen, we do not need to be teaching this radical LGBT grooming agenda in schools. It's one thing if parents want to do that on their own time. That is a parent's right to do that, with some exceptions, of course. But to bring this in and bake this into a public school curriculum is wrong. And meanwhile, Chinese students are learning quantum physics, and we've got our students learning how to twerk from drag queens. It's not going to end well. This is grooming. This is ideological mind control. It's introducing this to a group of individuals, especially to young kids who have no business learning any of this sexually explicit material. This is not about being anti-gay, or as the incorrectly labeled Ron DeSantis' bill, don't say gay. This is about keeping this out of the classroom because it does not belong there. This is a grooming agenda. It is extreme. It is explicit. It does not belong in front of young children at their school. They should be learning reading, writing, and arithmetic, not this filth.
Well, but I think you've made your position quite clear there, Ms. Lehrer. I imagine, Peter Tatchell, you agree with every word of that?
Well, here in Britain, we know from research that nearly half of all lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender pupils in our schools have been bullied. Bullied, teased, sometimes subjected to physical violence, simply because of their sexuality or their gender identity. So this education in British schools is designed to combat bullying and to promote understanding and acceptance. None of the teaching in British schools is sexually explicit, nor is any of the material in United States schools. It is all about promoting understanding and tolerance. So what's just been said is a complete misrepresentation of the teaching, and I think that any parent would want their child to be brought up in a school where understanding and acceptance of difference is valued, where people are not bullied because of their sexuality.
Okay, here's what I would say to that,
identity.
Peter. I don't disagree with some of what you just said. I think the issue here is age. I've got 4 kids. You've all gone through, obviously, all this. I just think the idea that at 4, any child should be exposed to anything like this is ridiculous. I really do. They're just nowhere near old enough to understand or even begin to understand any of the stuff that is being taught in this way. That's one debate, but actually the wider debate for me is what age should we be teaching kids about things like gender identity, and should they be compelled to go on pride parades and so on at the age of 4? I don't think so.
No one is compelling any child to go on a pride parade anywhere, not in school, not in the street, nowhere. And when it comes to teaching, the teaching is not about sex at a young age, it's about relationships and the fact that some kids will be in married heterosexual families, some will be in single families, some will be in extended families, and some will be in same-sex families. It's all about different families that kids in our schools are part of. And of course, all those kids should feel loved and appreciated. The essence of this teaching is about love and respect for other people. It's not about sex at all.
Because we've had a really scandalous case in the last few days, Tommy, here in the UK, of a transgender person who committed 2 rapes when identifying as a man, rapes of women. And before the court case started, he had transitioned to become a woman and then was tried under a female name. And then when he was convicted, this person, I'm using that term deliberately, I think, because I'm unconvinced by this transition process. When this person was then convicted, the brought in a law which allowed this trans person to then be put into a woman's prison as a woman who had literally got a penis and raped 2 women. So that not only were they being punished by being put into a place where they could attack other women, but they were being treated as if they were legitimately exactly the same as a woman born to a female biological body. What do you make of that?
She was put into a woman's prison, but in a segregation unit where she had no contact with other women.
But she shouldn't have been put in there at all.
A rapist must never, a rapist should never have contact or be a potential risk to other women. She's now been moved to a male prison, quite rightly, and again, she will have no contact with women.
Why do you say
So
why do you say she has been moved
that
to a male prison quite rightly, though? Because that immediately, to me, sounds incredibly confusing. You're saying she, so you presumably think that she is a woman, and yet she is being moved to a male prison because nobody else actually now thinks she is actually a woman. She's a man with a penis who raped 2 women. I mean, that's the reality. Even her ex, or his or her or person, whatever, their ex-wife said that this is all a complete scam to game the system and get into a softer prison.
But there are over 200.
Yeah, so I want to be very clear about this. Not everybody who is transgender does something like this. My turn to talk. Not everybody who is transgender is going to do something like this, but you're opening the door for this. And even beyond that, well, we're not even talking about a women's or a men's prison. Let's just talk about here in the USA, and I know in the UK as well, when they're having biological men compete in women's sports, using the same locker rooms, exposing themselves to the female athletes that are often in high school. It's inappropriate. It doesn't belong in schools. It doesn't belong in society. This free-for-all, you can identify as anything. You can abuse the system. You can abuse this whole notion of gender identity. It's gone too far. And to even criticize it now has been labeled bigotry. It's not. It's reality.
Okay.
We need to protect people. We need to especially protect young people.
Well, I actually agree with all that. I think the enemy is misogyny in many ways, but I think the enemy is also virtue signalling. But thank you very much, Peter Tatchell. Great to have you on the programme. Thank you, Tommy Lehring.